Marcus Thompson stepped off the transport ship and felt the warm air of Dracosia Prime fill his lungs. The planet smelled like sulfur and mountain stone, nothing like Earth. He adjusted his translator device on his collar and looked around at the landing platform carved directly into the mountainside. "Welcome to our world, small ones," rumbled a deep voice behind him. Marcus turned to see his first dragon up close. The creature stood nearly 20 feet tall, with dark red scales that gleamed in the sunlight. Golden eyes looked down at the group of humans with what seemed like barely hidden contempt. This was Elder Thane, the dragon who would guide their diplomatic mission. "Thank you for allowing us to visit," Commander Lisa Rodriguez said, stepping forward. She was the leader of their small team. "We hope this will be the start of good relations between our peoples." Elder Thane nodded slowly. "Perhaps you will learn our ways first. Then we will talk about trade." Marcus pulled out his datapad and started taking notes. He was here as a scientist, studying alien biology and culture. This was the chance of a lifetime. Dragons were one of the oldest known species in the galaxy, and they had never allowed outsiders to visit their homeworld before. The dragon city was carved into the cliffs and mountains, with bridges connecting different levels. Steam rose from hot springs throughout the settlement. Dragons flew between the platforms with powerful wing beats that echoed off the stone walls. Most of the dragons Marcus saw were males, easily identified by their larger size and brighter scales. "Where are the female dragons?" Marcus asked Jake Wilson, his engineer friend who walked beside him. "Good question," Jake whispered back. "I have only seen a few, and they stay in the background." Elder Thane led them through the main plaza where dozens of dragons gathered. They were trading goods, discussing business, and sharing news. All of them were male. The few females Marcus spotted kept their heads down and spoke only when spoken to. "Your females seem very quiet," Commander Rodriguez observed carefully. "Females know their place," Elder Thane replied. "They serve their purpose. Males lead and make decisions. This is the natural way." Marcus felt uncomfortable but kept his thoughts to himself. He was here to learn, not judge. At least not yet. They were given rooms in a guest area carved into the mountainside. The stone walls were decorated with images of dragons in flight and battle. Marcus noticed that all the dragons in the artwork were male. He made another note in his datapad. The next morning, Elder Thane took them on a tour of the outer settlements. As they flew on a transport platform, Marcus saw something that made him point toward a distant cave system. "What is that place?" he asked. "It looks like someone lives there, but it is far from everything else." Elder Thane's expression grew dark. "That is where the Cursed One dwells. Do not concern yourself with such matters." "Cursed One," Marcus pressed. "A female who has brought shame to our kind. She is better forgotten." But Marcus could not forget. As a scientist, mysteries drew him, like a magnet. When they returned to the main city, he asked other dragons about the isolated cave. Most refused to talk about it. A few muttered words like defective and unnatural before walking away. That evening, Jake found Marcus studying star maps in his room. "You are planning something stupid, are you not?" Jake said, settling into a chair. "I want to know what they are hiding," Marcus replied. "That dragon out there, the one they call cursed? What did she do that was so terrible? Maybe she killed someone. Maybe she stole something important. Does it matter?" Marcus looked at his friend. "What if she did not do anything wrong? What if they just decided she was cursed because she is different?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "You think this is about the way they treat females?" "I think there is more to this story than we are being told." The next day, Marcus told Commander Rodriguez he wanted to study the local plant life in the outer regions. It was not entirely a lie. He did plan to collect some samples, but his real goal was to get closer to those distant caves. He took a small hover bike and headed toward the mountains. The ride took 2 hours across rocky terrain and narrow canyon paths. As he got closer to the cave system, he could see that it was much larger than it appeared from a distance. Multiple caves connected by carved walkways suggested this had once been a proper settlement. Marcus parked his bike behind some rocks and approached on foot. He activated his translator and called out a greeting in the dragon language he had been learning. "Hello, is anyone there?" Silence. He tried again, louder this time. "I am a friend. I just want to talk." A shadow moved deep within the largest cave. Then a voice, softer than any male dragon he had heard, spoke from the darkness. "Go away, small creature. This place is not for you." "My name is Marcus. I am human. I come from another world. I know what you are. I also know you should not be here. The elders will be angry if they find you." Marcus took a step closer to the cave entrance. "Why do they call you cursed what? Did you do?" A long pause. Then the dragon spoke again, and Marcus could hear sadness in her voice. "I exist. That is my crime." "That does not make sense. Can you explain?" Another shadow moved in the cave, then another. Marcus realized there were multiple dragons living here. All females, he guessed, based on their smaller size and different coloring. "Please," Marcus said. "I am a scientist. I study how different species live. I want to understand." The dragon in the cave was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "I am called Ember. I have lived for 1,000 years. In all that time, I have hatched 7 daughters. 7 beautiful, intelligent daughters. The council says this makes me defective. They say I am cursed because I cannot produce sons." Marcus felt his heart sink. "They punish you for having female children. They cast me out. My daughters were taken from me when they were old enough. Some were sent to serve in distant settlements. Others were exiled like me. I have not seen most of them in centuries. That is horrible." "It is the way of our people," Ember said, but her voice carried pain. "Males are precious. Females are tolerated. A female who cannot produce males has no value." Marcus stood at the cave entrance, processing what he had learned. This was not just cultural difference. This was systematic oppression based on something completely beyond anyone's control. "May I see you?" he asked gently. Another long pause. Then Ember moved into the light at the cave entrance. She was beautiful, with deep purple scales that seemed to shimmer with inner light. Her eyes were silver, filled with ancient wisdom and deep sadness. She was smaller than the male dragons, but carried herself with quiet dignity. "You are the first outsider to speak to me in 300 years, she said. "I am honored to meet you," Marcus replied, and he meant it. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, Marcus knew his life had just changed forever. He had come to Dracosia Prime to study an alien culture. Instead, he had found an injustice that demanded action. The question was, what could one human do against a civilization of dragons? Marcus returned to the Dragon City as darkness fell over the mountains. His mind raced with questions about what he had learned. He found Jake in the dining hall, eating what looked like roasted mountain goat with the other team members. "Where have you been all day?" Jake asked. "Commander Rodriguez was looking for you." "Collecting samples," Marcus replied, which was technically true. He had gathered some plants on his way back. "The local ecosystem is fascinating." Jake gave him a suspicious look but said nothing more. Marcus ate his dinner quickly and excused himself to his room. He needed to think about everything Ember had told him. The next morning, Elder Thane announced they would visit the Dragon Archives. These were ancient libraries carved deep into the mountain where dragon history and knowledge were stored. "Your species values learning," Elder Thane said as he led them through corridors lined with stone tablets and crystal data storage devices. "Perhaps you will find our wisdom useful." Marcus walked through the archives with growing amazement. The dragons had records going back tens of thousands of years. They had discovered mathematics, astronomy, and engineering long before humans had learned to write. But as he studied the displays, Marcus noticed something troubling. All the great dragon scholars and inventors shown in the historical records were male. Every single one. "Where are the female achievements?" Marcus asked a dragon librarian named Keth. Keth looked confused. "Female achievements. Surely some of your female dragons contributed to science or art or invention over all these thousands of years. Females do not create, Keth replied as if explaining something obvious to a child. They exist to produce offspring. Males build civilization. Marcus wanted to argue but held his tongue. He was starting to form a theory about dragon society, but he needed more information first. That afternoon, Marcus told the team he was going to study geological formations in the outer regions. Commander Rodriguez raised an eyebrow but did not stop him. She was busy negotiating trade agreements, and probably assumed Marcus was just being his usual curious self. Marcus rode his hoverbike back toward Ember's caves. This time he brought medical scanning equipment and biological sample containers. If he was going to understand what was really happening here, he needed scientific data. Ember was waiting for him at the cave entrance when he arrived. "You came back," she said, sounding surprised. "I told you I was a scientist. I want to learn more about your people. About you." Ember stepped aside to let him enter the cave system. Inside, Marcus saw that the caves were much more elaborate than they appeared from outside. The walls were decorated with intricate carvings and paintings. Furniture was carved from stone and wood. Gardens grew in areas where sunlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling. "This is beautiful," Marcus said, genuinely impressed. "I have had many centuries to work on it," Ember replied. "When you live alone, you find ways to occupy your time." Two smaller dragons emerged from the inner caves. Marcus recognized them as female from their build and coloring, but they were much younger than Ember. "These are Ruby and Jade," Ember said. "My youngest daughters. They are barely past hatchling age by our standards." The young dragons looked at Marcus with curious eyes. They seemed less afraid than their mother had been the day before. "Hello," Ruby said in accented but clear human speech. "You are the alien visitor Mother told us about." Marcus was startled. "You speak my language. We have been listening to your communication broadcasts for years," Jade explained. "We taught ourselves your words by studying your signals." Marcus looked at Ember in amazement. "They learned human language on their own." "My daughters are very intelligent," Ember said with obvious pride. "All my daughters have been gifted learners." Over the next several hours, Marcus interviewed Ruby and Jade while Ember watched. He gave them puzzles to solve, math problems to work through, and memory tests to complete. The results were remarkable. Both young dragons scored higher than most adult humans would on similar tests. "How long have they been learning?" Marcus asked Ember. "Since they could speak. I have taught them everything I know about science, history, art, and philosophy." "And what do you know?" Ember was quiet for a moment. "More than the council realizes. More than they would admit if they knew." She led Marcus deeper into the caves to what she called her study. The walls were covered with mathematical equations, star charts, engineering diagrams, and artistic sketches. Marcus recognized advanced concepts in physics and chemistry that matched or exceeded current human knowledge. "You did all this?" Marcus asked. "Over many centuries, yes. I have had time to think and study while in exile." Marcus pulled out his scanner and asked permission to take biological samples from all three dragons. They agreed, curious about human technology. As he worked, he asked more questions about dragon society and history. "Has it always been this way?" Marcus asked. "Males in charge, females treated as lesser beings." "No," Ember replied. "When I was young, things were different, not equal but better. Females could serve as advisors, some became artists or teachers, but that changed during the Great War." "What war?" "A conflict with another species about 2,000 years ago. Resources became scarce. Dragons became desperate. The males decided that every female must focus only on producing offspring to rebuild our population. What started as emergency policy became permanent law." Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together. "So this system is not ancient tradition. It is relatively recent. Recent for us, but it has lasted long enough that most dragons believe it has always been this way." Ruby looked up from a physics problem Marcus had given her. "Mother says things used to be different, but the males forgot the old ways." "Not forgot," Jade corrected her sister. "They chose to forget." Marcus spent the rest of the day learning about the true capabilities of female dragons. Ember showed him inventions she had created in isolation. Ruby and Jade demonstrated problem-solving skills that impressed him more each hour. By evening, Marcus was convinced he had discovered something important. "Why do you not fight back?" he asked as he prepared to leave. "You are clearly intelligent and capable. Why accept this treatment?" Ember looked sad. "What can we do? We are outnumbered. The males are larger and stronger. Most importantly, the other females believe what they have been told. They think they are inferior. They accept their place. But you do not believe that. I know what I am capable of. I know what my daughters can achieve. But knowledge means nothing if no one will listen." Marcus rode back to the city that night with his head spinning. He had discovered that dragon society was built on a lie. Female dragons were not inferior. They were different but in many ways superior. They had better memory, stronger analytical thinking, and more creative problem-solving abilities. The dragons were systematically suppressing their own best minds. The question now was what to do with this knowledge. Marcus was just one human on a diplomatic mission. If he challenged dragon society directly, he could destroy any chance of peaceful relations between their species. But how could he stay silent when he had seen such clear injustice? As he entered the guest quarters, Marcus found Commander Rodriguez waiting for him. "We need to talk," she said, and her expression told him that his secret trips might not be as secret as he had hoped. Commander Rodriguez closed the door to Marcus's room and crossed her arms. Her face showed the kind of expression that meant serious trouble. "Where have you really been going these past few days?" she asked. Marcus considered lying, but realized it was pointless. Rodriguez was too smart and had probably already figured out most of the truth. "I have been visiting a dragon named Ember who lives in exile," he said. "She was cast out because she only produces female offspring." "Marcus, you cannot interfere with their culture. We are here to establish trade relations, not judge their society." "But, Commander, what if their culture is built on lies? What if they are oppressing their own people for no good reason?" Rodriguez sat down heavily. "Explain." Marcus told her everything he had learned about Ember, Ruby, and Jade. He showed her the test results and biological scans. He explained about the mathematical equations and inventions he had seen in Ember's caves. "The female dragons are not inferior," Marcus concluded. "In many ways, they are superior. The dragons are wasting the potential of half their population." Rodriguez studied the data for a long time. "This is complicated, Marcus. Even if you are right, we cannot just tell an entire civilization they are wrong about everything." "Maybe not, but we cannot pretend we do not know the truth either." Before Rodriguez could respond, Jake burst into the room without knocking. "We have a problem," Jake said breathlessly. "Elder Thane knows about your visits to the exile caves. He is furious." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "How did he find out?" "I think someone followed you. There are tracker devices on all our equipment. They probably monitored your hoverbike." Rodriguez stood up quickly. "What exactly did Elder Thane say?" "He wants to see Marcus immediately. He used words like betrayal and corruption. This does not sound good." The three humans walked through the dragon city toward the council chambers. Marcus noticed that dragons were staring at them with hostile expressions. Word had clearly spread about his unauthorized visits. Elder Thane waited in the great hall, with several other male dragons. Their golden eyes blazed with anger. Standing behind them was a dragon Marcus had not met before, larger and more intimidating than the others. "This is Counselor Vex," Elder Thane announced. "He leads our traditional council and maintains our ancient laws." Vex stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the humans. "You have violated our trust, alien. You have spoken with the Cursed One against our direct warnings." "I was curious about your culture," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I meant no disrespect." "Curiosity," Vex roared. "You have polluted yourself with contact to the defective female. You have listened to her lies and corruption." "What lies?" Marcus asked. "She only told me about her life and her daughters." "Her very existence is a lie," Vex declared. She pretends to have value when she has none. She fills her worthless offspring with ideas above their station. She is a disease that must be contained. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. She is intelligent and talented. Her daughters are brilliant. How can you call them worthless? The dragons in the hall began making threatening, growling sounds. Vex's eyes narrowed dangerously. You dare to question our ways? You suggest that we are wrong about our own species? Commander Rodriguez stepped forward quickly. Counselor Vex, Dr. Thompson is a scientist. He studies different cultures. He meant no offense. Offense has been taken regardless, Elder Thane said coldly. The question now is how to handle this violation of our trust. Vex smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. I propose a simple solution. Execute the cursed female as punishment for corrupting an alien visitor. This will demonstrate to your species what happens when our laws are ignored. Marcus stepped forward before Rodriguez could stop him. You cannot kill her for my actions. If anyone should be punished, it should be me. Marcus, stop talking, Rodriguez hissed. But Marcus could not stop. The thought of Ember dying because of his curiosity was unbearable. If you want to punish someone, punish me, but do not hurt her or her daughters. Vex looked delighted. How interesting. The alien wants to die for the worthless female. I want justice, Marcus replied, and killing innocent dragons is not justice. Innocent. Vex laughed harshly. The cursed one has corrupted your mind completely. She has made you believe her lies about female worth. Elder Thane looked troubled. Perhaps execution is too extreme, Vex. We could simply increase the exile terms. No, Vex declared. This corruption must end permanently. The cursed one dies, and these aliens learn not to interfere with dragon law. Marcus felt desperate. He remembered something Ember had mentioned about dragon history and traditions. Wait, I request trial by advocacy. The hall fell silent. Several dragons looked confused. Elder Thane frowned deeply. What did you say? Elder Thane asked. Trial by advocacy. Ember told me it is an ancient dragon law. An outsider can speak in defense of an accused dragon before the full council. Vex's expression turned murderous. That law has not been used in over 1,000 years, but it still exists, Marcus pressed. Elder Thane looked uncomfortable. The law does exist, but it was designed for different circumstances. The law says an outsider can defend any dragon accused of crimes against society, Marcus continued, hoping he remembered Ember's words correctly. I formally request to serve as Ember's advocate. Several dragons began arguing among themselves in their own language. Marcus could not understand the words, but the tone was clearly heated. Finally, Elder Thane raised his hand for silence. The request is technically legal under our ancient laws. However, the trial would be before the full council, with hundreds of dragons present. And if the advocacy fails, Vex added with obvious pleasure, both the accused and the advocate face the ultimate penalty. Marcus felt Jake grab his arm. Marcus, this is insane. You could die. If I do nothing, Ember dies anyway, Marcus replied. At least this gives her a chance. Commander Rodriguez looked pale. Marcus, I cannot authorize this. It could destroy our entire diplomatic mission. Then I am not asking for authorization, Marcus said. I am asking for the right to do what is correct. Elder Thane studied Marcus for a long moment. You understand the risks. You could die for defending a worthless female. She is not worthless, Marcus said firmly. And I will prove it. Vex's smile became even more frightening. Excellent. We will hold the trial in 3 days. That should give you time to prepare your futile defense. As the dragons dismissed them, Jake grabbed Marcus's arm again. Have you lost your mind? You just agreed to argue law with creatures who have been practicing it for thousands of years. Someone has to stand up for what is right, Marcus replied. Rodriguez shook her head. I hope you know what you are doing, because if this goes wrong, it will not just be your life on the line. Marcus nodded grimly. He had 3 days to prepare a defense that could save Ember's life and possibly change dragon society forever. The question was whether 3 days would be enough. Marcus spent the first night after the confrontation staring at the ceiling of his room. 3 days seemed impossible. How could he prepare a legal defense in a system he barely understood, in a language he was still learning, for a culture that had already decided Ember was worthless? Jake found him the next morning hunched over his datapad, surrounded by notes and translation guides. "You look terrible," Jake said, setting down a cup of coffee. "Have you slept at all?" "No time for sleep," Marcus replied without looking up. "I need to understand dragon law, dragon history, and dragon biology well enough to convince hundreds of dragons that they are wrong about everything." Jake sat down across from him. "Maybe I can help." Marcus finally looked up. "This is not your fight, Jake. You could get in serious trouble just for helping me." "We are friends," Jake said simply. "Friends help each other do the right thing, even when it is dangerous." Commander Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. Marcus expected her to order him to abandon his plans, but instead she sat down at the table. "I have been thinking about this all night," she said. "What you are doing is reckless and could destroy our mission. But I have also been reviewing the cultural data we have collected since arriving." She pulled out her own datapad and showed them screen after screen of observations about dragon society. "The treatment of female dragons bothers me too," Rodriguez continued. "I have been trained to respect alien cultures, but some things are just wrong regardless of culture." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "Does that mean you will help? I cannot officially support this, but I will not stop you either. And if you need resources for your research, I might be able to provide them quietly." The 3 humans spent the morning reviewing everything they knew about dragon society. Rodriguez had access to detailed cultural files that Marcus had not seen before. Jake contributed his engineering perspective, pointing out inconsistencies in dragon technology that might indicate suppressed innovation. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to images of dragon architecture. "Their buildings are functional, but not particularly creative. Yet the carvings in Ember's cave show incredible artistic vision. What if female dragons are the creative force their society is missing?" Marcus made notes frantically. "That could be part of my argument. I need to show that excluding females hurts all dragons, not just the females themselves." Rodriguez looked through diplomatic files. "I found something interesting. Dragon birth records show that roughly 60% of hatchlings are female. If they are systematically suppressing the majority of their population, that explains why their civilization has been stagnant for centuries." "Stagnant how?" Marcus asked. "Their technology, art, and science have barely advanced in the past 2,000 years. They have been living off achievements from earlier periods." Marcus felt pieces of his defense strategy coming together. But he still needed more evidence. "I have to go back to Ember. I need her help to understand the legal system." "That could be dangerous," Rodriguez warned. "They are probably watching you now." "I have an idea about that," Jake said. "What if we created a distraction? What if I had an engineering emergency that required taking equipment to the outer regions?" Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "What kind of emergency?" "A problem with our communication array. I could claim it is interfering with local dragon electronics and needs to be moved for testing." "That might work," Rodriguez agreed. "I could authorize the expedition as a diplomatic necessity." 2 hours later, Jake was loading a hover truck with communication equipment while loudly complaining about technical problems. Marcus slipped away during the commotion and took a different route to Ember's caves. He found Ember waiting for him with Ruby and Jade. All 3 dragons looked worried. "We heard about the trial," Ember said. "You should not have done this. You will die for nothing." "Not for nothing," Marcus replied. "For justice, for truth, for the future of your daughters." "The future," Ember laughed bitterly. "There is no future for dragons like us." Marcus sat down on a stone ledge and looked directly at Ember. "Help me change that. Tell me about dragon law. Tell me about the trial process. Give me the weapons I need to fight for you." Ember was quiet for a long time. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. But you must understand what you face. The trial will be held in the Great Assembly, Every adult dragon on the planet will attend. They will want to see the alien who dares to challenge their traditions. What are the rules? Counselor Vex will present the case against me. He will cite the law that says females who cannot produce male offspring are defective and should be removed from society. Then you will have the chance to respond. How long do I have to speak? As long as you want, in theory. But if the council becomes bored or angry, they can vote to end the trial immediately. Ruby spoke up. Mother, tell him about the old laws. Ember nodded. There are ancient laws that contradict the current system, laws from before the Great War, but they have been forgotten or ignored. Where can I find these laws? In the deepest parts of the archives, records that have not been accessed in centuries. Marcus felt excitement building. Can you help me find them? I cannot enter the city, Ember said, but I can tell you where to look, and I can give you something else. She disappeared into the inner caves and returned carrying a crystal data storage device. This contains my life's work, she said. Mathematical proofs, scientific discoveries, artistic creations. Everything I have accomplished in my 1,000 years of existence. Marcus took the crystal carefully. Why are you giving this to me? Because whether you win or lose, someone should know what a worthless female dragon can achieve. Jade moved closer, to Marcus. Will you tell them about us too, about how we learned your language and solved your puzzles? Yes, Marcus promised. I will tell them everything. He spent the rest of the day learning about dragon legal procedures and ancient laws. Ember taught him the proper way to address the council, the protocols for presenting evidence, and the historical precedents he could cite. Remember, Ember said as the sun began to set, dragons respect strength and courage above all else. If you show fear, you lose immediately. And if I show too much confidence, they will think you are insulting them, which is equally dangerous. Marcus rode back to the city feeling more prepared but also more nervous. He had one day left to gather the evidence he needed and prepare his arguments. Jake was waiting for him with good news and bad news. The good news is that I got into the deep archives while pretending to test equipment interference, Jake said. I found some of those ancient laws Ember mentioned. And the bad news, Counselor Vex knows we were helping you. He is furious and has demanded that Commander Rodriguez control her team better. Rodriguez appeared looking grim. Vex has also changed the trial rules. Instead of just arguing your case, you now have to prove your points through tests and demonstrations. What kind of tests? Intelligence tests, problem-solving challenges, memory trials. You have to prove that female dragons are equal to males in front of the entire assembly. Marcus felt his heart sink. How can I do that if Ember cannot attend the trial? Rodriguez smiled for the first time in days. That is where we got creative. I negotiated for the right to bring witnesses. As your advocate, you can call any dragon you want to testify, including Ember, and her daughters. Marcus stared at his commander in amazement. How did you manage that? I told them it was a human legal tradition. They want to see us fail so badly that they agreed to let us do it our way. Jake grinned. So now you just have to convince Ember to come out of exile and face the dragons who have tormented her for centuries. Marcus thought about the proud, intelligent dragon living alone in her caves. She will do it. For her daughters, she will do it. The trial was tomorrow. One way or another, everything would change. The great assembly was carved into the heart of the mountain, a massive cavern that could hold thousands of dragons. Marcus had never seen so many dragons in one place before. The sight was both magnificent and terrifying. Dragons perched on stone, ledges that rose in circles around the central floor. Their scales gleamed in the light from crystal formations that hung from the ceiling. Most were male, their larger forms and brighter colors dominating the space. The female dragons present kept to the back sections, quiet and almost invisible. Elder Thane stood at the center of the assembly floor. His voice echoed off the stone walls as he called for order. We gather today for a trial by advocacy, he announced. The accused is the female called Ember, charged with being defective and corrupting alien visitors. Her advocate is the human Marcus Thompson. A wave of growling and hissing sounds swept through the assembly. Marcus could feel hundreds of hostile eyes watching him as he walked onto the floor. He wore his best diplomatic uniform and carried a bag containing the evidence he had gathered. Counselor Vex stepped forward with obvious confidence. He was even more imposing in the great cavern, his dark scales and golden eyes making him look like a creature from nightmares. "Fellow dragons," Vex began, his voice carrying easily through the space. "Today we face a simple question. Will we allow an alien to tell us we are wrong about our own species?" Roars of agreement echoed from the assembly. Marcus felt his heart pounding but forced himself to stay calm. "The female called Ember has lived for 1,000 years, Vex continued. In all that time she has produced 7 offspring, 7 failures, 7 worthless females who contribute nothing to our society. She cannot fulfill the basic purpose of her existence," Vex declared. "She is defective by our laws and should have been eliminated long ago. Instead, we showed mercy and allowed her to live in exile." The counselor began pacing around Marcus like a predator circling prey. But mercy was not enough for this creature. She corrupted an alien visitor with lies about female worth. She filled his mind with impossible ideas about equality. "Our laws are clear," Vex said, raising his voice. "Males lead because they are strong and wise. Females serve because that is their nature. This has been our way for thousands of years." Vex stopped directly in front of Marcus. "The alien will try to confuse you with foreign ideas and strange science. Do not listen. Trust in the wisdom of your ancestors." The counselor returned to his position and spread his wings wide. "I call for immediate judgment. Execute the defective female and send the aliens home before they spread more corruption." The assembly erupted in approval. Dragons roared and stamped their feet. Marcus realized that many of them had already made up their minds before the trial even began. Elder Thane called for quiet and turned to Marcus. "Human advocate, you may now present your defense." Marcus walked to the center of the floor. His mouth felt dry and his hands were shaking slightly, but he forced himself to speak clearly. "Honored dragons," he began, "I ask you to listen not to foreign ideas but to your own history." He pulled out copies of the ancient laws Jake had found in the deep archives. "These are records from your own libraries, laws that existed before the Great War, laws that recognized the value of all dragons regardless of gender." Some dragons leaned forward with interest. Others looked skeptical. 2,000 years ago, your ancestors wrote that dragons should be judged by their actions and achievements, not by their ability to produce specific types of offspring. Marcus held up the crystal data storage device Ember had given him. "I have proof that the dragon you call defective has spent her exile, creating scientific discoveries, mathematical innovations, and artistic masterpieces. But rather than tell you about her achievements," Marcus continued, "I want to show you. I call my first witness." The assembly doors opened, and Ember walked in. A shocked silence fell over the crowd. Many dragons had not seen her in centuries. She moved with quiet dignity toward the center of the floor, her purple scales shimmering in the crystal light. "Ember," Marcus said formally, "please tell the assembly about your work during your exile." Ember's voice was steady despite the hundreds of hostile eyes watching her. "I have spent my time studying mathematics, physics, and engineering. I have made discoveries about crystal resonance that could improve your communication systems. I have developed new architectural techniques that could make your buildings stronger and more beautiful." She gestured toward the crystal device Marcus held. "All of my work is recorded there for anyone to examine." Counselor Vex interrupted angrily. "Words mean nothing. Anyone can claim to have made discoveries." "Then let us test her claims." Marcus replied. He turned to Elder Thane. "I request permission to demonstrate Ember's knowledge through direct challenge." Elder Thane looked intrigued. "What kind of challenge?" "Ask her to solve problems that your best male scholars cannot handle. Give her mathematical equations, engineering puzzles, or scientific questions. Let her prove her worth through action." The assembly buzzed with conversation. This was not how trials usually proceeded, but the dragons were curious despite themselves. Elder. Thane consulted with other council members, then nodded. Very well. We will test the accused. For the next hour, the assembly watched as Ember solved complex mathematical problems, designed structural improvements for the cavern itself, and answered scientific questions that stumped several male dragon scholars. With each success, the crowd grew quieter and more thoughtful. My second witness, Marcus announced, is Ruby, Ember's daughter. Ruby entered the assembly with visible nervousness, but held her head high. She was much younger and smaller than the adult dragons around her, but she spoke with confidence. Ruby, Marcus said, please demonstrate your knowledge of human language and culture. Ruby spoke fluently in several human languages, discussed human history and science, and even recited poetry she had composed herself. The assembly was clearly impressed despite their prejudices. My third witness is Jade, Ruby's sister. Jade entered and proved equally impressive. She solved engineering problems, created artistic designs on the spot, and answered questions about dragon history that many older dragons could not handle. Marcus looked around the assembly as murmurs of surprise and confusion spread through the crowd. These are the worthless females you want to eliminate, Marcus declared. A mother who has made scientific discoveries that could benefit all dragons, and daughters who have achieved more in their short lives than many of your honored males achieve in centuries. Councillor Vex was clearly angry but tried to maintain control. Tricks and alien corruption, he snarled. These creatures have been taught to perform like trained animals. Then test them yourself, Marcus challenged. Give them any problem you want. See if their knowledge is real or just performance. What followed was an intense series of challenges as various male dragons tried to find questions that Ember, Ruby, and Jade could not answer. They failed repeatedly. The three females demonstrated superior knowledge in multiple fields. Marcus pulled out his biological scan data. I have also studied dragon genetics. I discovered that female dragons have longer lifespans, better memory retention, and superior analytical thinking abilities compared to males. Impossible, Vex roared. Test it, Marcus replied calmly. Compare the test results of these three females to any male dragons you choose. Elder Thane looked troubled. If this is true, why have we never known it? Because you never tested it, Marcus answered. You assumed male superiority and never questioned that assumption. The assembly was growing restless. Some dragons looked angry, others confused, and a few appeared thoughtful. Marcus realized he was reaching a critical moment. I do not ask you to abandon your traditions, Marcus said, addressing the entire assembly. I ask you to return to your older, wiser traditions, the laws that valued all dragons for their contributions. He pointed to Ember, Ruby, and Jade. These dragons prove that your current system wastes the potential of half your species. How many discoveries have been lost? How many innovations have you missed? How much greater could dragon civilization be if you used all your talents instead of half of them? Councillor Vex stepped forward with rage in his eyes. Enough lies. The alien seeks to destroy our way of life with false promises and corrupted thinking. Vote now, Vex demanded. Execute the defective female and end this madness. But before the vote could begin, something unexpected happened. A female dragon in the back of the assembly stood up and spoke. I want to be tested too. The female dragon who had spoken was named Crystal. She was middle-aged by dragon standards, with silver-blue scales and intelligent green eyes. Her voice carried clearly through the suddenly silent assembly. I have lived for 600 years, believing I was inferior, Crystal said. I have accepted my place in the shadows, thinking I had nothing to offer. But watching these tests, I realize I have been living a lie. She stepped down from her perch and walked toward the center of the floor. I have ideas about improving our farming techniques. I have solutions to problems with our water systems. I have been silent because I was told my thoughts were worthless. Another female dragon stood up, then another. Within minutes, dozens of female dragons throughout the assembly were rising to their feet. I can design better flying machines, called out one. I know how to make our metalwork stronger, said another. I have been writing music that no one has ever heard, declared a third. Counselor Vex roared for order, but his voice was drowned out by the growing chorus of female dragons speaking for the first time in their lives. Marcus watched in amazement, as centuries of suppressed voices suddenly found their courage. What had started as a trial had become a revolution. Elder Thane looked overwhelmed by the chaos. "Order," he called repeatedly. "We must have order." But the female dragons were no longer willing to be ordered into silence. They surrounded Ember, Ruby and Jade, offering support and sharing their own stories of hidden talents and suppressed dreams. Counselor Vex spread his wings and breathed fire into the air above the crowd. The dramatic display got everyone's attention. "This is exactly the corruption I warned you about," Vex snarled. "The alien has poisoned our females with impossible ideas. They think they can be more than they are." "They already are more than you allowed them to be," Marcus replied firmly. "You just refuse to see it." Some of the male dragons in the assembly were looking uncertain. They had just witnessed clear proof that their beliefs about female dragons were wrong. Others, however, remained hostile to any change. "Even if some females have hidden talents," one male dragon called out, "our system has worked for 2,000 years. Why change now?" Marcus had been waiting for this question. "Because your system has not worked. Your civilization has been stagnant for centuries. You have made no major advances in science, art, or technology." He gestured toward the female dragons gathered around Ember. "Look at what they accomplished while being ignored and suppressed. Imagine what they could achieve if they were encouraged and supported." Elder Thane stepped forward, clearly struggling with what he had witnessed. "These are serious matters. We cannot make hasty decisions about traditions that have lasted millennia." "Respectfully," Marcus replied, "these traditions have only lasted 2 millennia. Before that, you had different traditions that valued all dragons." Ruby spoke up from where she stood with her mother. "Elder Thane, may I ask you a question?" The old dragon looked surprised but nodded. "If you discovered that half your food was poisoned, would you keep eating it because that was traditional, or would you find new food that would make you stronger?" The simple wisdom of the young dragon's question silenced many of the arguments. Even some of the male dragons began nodding thoughtfully. Counselor Vex was clearly desperate. "You cannot trust the words of children and exiles. They will say anything to avoid their deserved punishment." "Then let us test everyone," Crystal called out. "Test every dragon in this assembly, male and female. Let us see who truly has the greatest knowledge and ability." The suggestion created an uproar. Some dragons loved the idea, others were terrified by it. Marcus realized this was his moment. "I challenge Counselor Vex to a contest of knowledge with any female dragon of his choosing." The assembly fell silent. This was unprecedented. Vex's eyes blazed with fury. "I will not dignify such nonsense with my participation." "Why not?" Marcus asked innocently. "If female dragons are truly inferior, you should easily defeat any of them." "I have nothing to prove to an alien." Ember stepped forward. "You have everything to prove to your own people. You have spent centuries telling us we are worthless. Prove it." The challenge hung in the air like a sword. Vex was trapped between his pride and his fear of being proven wrong. The assembly waited to see what he would do. Finally, Vex snarled his acceptance. "Very well. I will demonstrate the natural superiority of males once and for all." What followed was the most intense intellectual contest Marcus had ever witnessed. Vex chose to face Ember in a battle of knowledge covering history, science, mathematics, and philosophy. For 2 hours, the assembly watched as Ember systematically outperformed Vex in every category. Her 1,000 years of exile had been spent learning and growing, while Vex had spent his time enforcing traditions without questioning them. When Ember solved a mathematical problem that Vex could not even understand, the contest was clearly over. Elder Thane looked around the assembly at the stunned faces of his people. "It appears we have much to reconsider about our beliefs." Vex refused to accept defeat. "This proves nothing. One unusual female does not change the natural order." "Then test more," Marcus suggested. Test every dragon who wants to be tested. Find out who your real scholars and innovators are. Over the following days, dragons throughout the assembly took voluntary tests of knowledge and ability. The results shocked everyone except Marcus. Female dragons consistently outperformed males in most intellectual categories, while males showed advantages in physical strength and certain tactical skills. The revelation forced a complete rethinking of dragon society. Elder Thane called for a new council session a week after the trial. "We have learned that our understanding of dragon nature was flawed," he admitted publicly. "We must change our laws to reflect the truth about our people." The new laws abolished the restrictions on female dragons. They could now participate fully in dragon society as scholars, artists, engineers, and leaders. A new council was formed with equal representation from males and females. Ember was not only freed from exile, but appointed as the new chief science advisor. Ruby and Jade were enrolled in the finest dragon schools, where their talents could develop fully. Marcus stood in the Great Assembly one last time before returning to Earth. The cavern looked different now, filled with dragons of both genders, working together on problems that had puzzled their civilization for centuries. "You have given us a great gift," Elder Thane told Marcus. "You showed us the truth about ourselves." "I just refused to accept that injustice was inevitable," Marcus replied. "Your people did the hard work of changing." Ember approached with Ruby and Jade beside her. "We cannot thank you enough for what you have done." "Thank yourselves," Marcus said. "You had the courage to show your true abilities when it mattered most." Commander Rodriguez joined them, smiling broadly. "The trade negotiations are going better than we ever hoped. It turns out that when you include everyone in the discussions, you get much more creative solutions." Jake punched Marcus on the shoulder. "Not bad for a few days' work. You only revolutionized an entire civilization." As Marcus boarded the transport ship for the journey home, he looked back at Dracosia Prime one last time. Dragons of all types were flying between the mountain settlements, working together in ways they had not done for 2,000 years. He thought about what he had learned during his time on the dragon world. Sometimes the most powerful weapon against injustice was simply refusing to accept that things had to stay the way they were. Sometimes courage meant standing up for others even when it put yourself at risk. Most importantly, he had learned that truth and justice were not human concepts. They were universal values that could unite different species across the galaxy. The ship lifted off toward the stars, carrying Marcus home to Earth. But he knew that his real home now included a distant mountain world where dragons of all kinds could finally reach their full potential. Behind him in her new laboratory, Ember was already working on innovations that would change dragon civilization forever. Her daughters studied beside her, preparing to become the leaders and innovators their grandmother's generation never had the chance to be. The future was brighter for everyone.